Welcome to the What Now podcast, where we document our journey through chiropractic. Our goal is to give you, the new chiropractor, our firsthand experience in running a principled, cash-based practice right out of school. Join us as we bring you real perspective, lessons learned, and the leading names in the profession as we build the practices of our dreams. Yo, everybody. What is up? Welcome back to another episode of the What Now podcast. Spencer and Zach back in action with you guys with a super special guest. Zach, let everybody know who we're bringing to them today.
Yeah, we're back after the Dupre honeymoon, but we're excited today. Our guest today has been building an amazing chiropractic practice in Austin, Texas. He founded Lifespring Chiropractic in 2017, where they regularly see some of the world's best athletes, including many NFL players and University of Texas football stars like Bijan Robinson and Archie Manning. The better part of the story for a lot of us entrepreneurs is how Dr. Matt followed what everyone told him he needed to do to be a successful business owner, and he ended up with one foot in the grave. He was literally diagnosed with Graves' disease, an autoimmune thyroid disorder, right out of school in 2017 from all of the hustle and grind. He then chose to redefine the rules and craft a business that works for his lifestyle, all the while sending his autoimmune diagnosis into remission. He has built his work around his life rather than his life around his work. Please join me in welcoming from Austin, Texas, a chiropractor, Chiro nerd, and self-proclaimed coffee snob, Dr. Matt Delgado. Matt, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thank you.
Super excited to have you on here and dive into the last 7 years of chiropractic for you and what you've uncovered. But before we really dive into that, what has chiropractic been like for you in the last 7 years? And we were hinting before even jumping on the recording, the difference you have seen 7 years ago to 2 to 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's I guess it's looked so different, really. I'd say every year, and it's like reading a book, and every chapter is so different. So it's hard when you ask a summation of 7 years is really tough to answer. But I think if I had to sum up 7 years, I'm proud of what I've created. I'm more proud of who I am as a human. There's my sentence. There's my line.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah. Before we get too deep into it, all right. So Zach and I feel like are both like kind of self-proclaimed coffee snobs as well. I think that when you go through Chiro school and you have to drink a lot of coffee and you're up late at night, you get kind of into it. And then we all like to study in coffee shops. So what tell us about your coffee journey and your snobness? How, like what level are you at?
Oh, I like it. This is my favorite to talk about too. Good way to start us out here. And I've been doing a home espresso. Well, I guess if I go back far enough, my dad worked for a big coffee roaster. There's still a really famous coffee roaster in Bellingham, Washington, called Tony's Coffee. And I remember as a kid going to work even with my dad and the smell of fresh roasted coffee and always being around a coffee shop. And he worked in sales, so it was like the distribution and trying to get it into local grocery stores.
Yeah.
So being around it as a kid, and I remember as a kid even making coffee for my dad, but I didn't start drinking it until I got to college, like probably a lot of us. And I hate to admit this is probably the first time I've ever said this publicly, but I'm going to. The first coffee drink that I ever really got into was a white mocha because it was straight sugar.
I think
And
that's everybody's intro.
right?
That was my first drink too.
I feel better.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wish I could say the same. I had no idea. I walked up to a Starbucks and I'd always heard my dad order Americano, and so I'm like, that's what I'll get. And then I didn't drink coffee for like another 3 years.
I mean, good choice.
Just too strong. Too strong at the time for
Absolutely.
Yeah.
a young coffee
for young
person.
Zach.
Yeah.
Diesel, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but I got into the white mocha action too. That was easy, and then I was like, slowly and slowly you get more bitter.
yeah, that's the truth. Now I'm the, black coffee Americano, like a short Americano, like a long black, I guess. In the US, we don't call it that, but it'd be like a short Americano. And I've been doing home espresso now for probably 11 years. And I go down all the rabbit holes on YouTube. And my favorite thing is a Facebook group that I'm on called Home Espresso. I can't remember, some Home Espresso related. And there's like 50,000 people from all over the world. And it's hilarious the things they post about. But it's taught me a lot more about coffee. And I bought my dream setup about a year ago.
You have a
It's
Breville?
No, a La Marzocco Linea Mini.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I got the like custom wood accents on it. I like the little details. So, and there was a time in my life where I was even when I first started to make pretty good money as a chiropractor. I remember I lived with my brother for a period of time. We had one couch that we got for free off of like Facebook Marketplace. I had a bed with a bed frame. We had no other furniture in our home. And at the time, I had a $3,000 espresso set up and a nice bike. So that's always been my priorities is a coffee.
Yeah. So, yeah, Austin fits you well then.
It does. Yeah.
That's good.
Hmm.
Yeah.
We're
So
actually
as like things
before we
have
dive into
developed,
that, we're headed down in a month to Austin. What would you say if
oh
we
yeah.
had two or three coffee shops that we had to go to?
Yeah. I gotta shout out Patica Coffee, South Lamar. So it's right by my office. If you want to come say hi, please come say hi. I'll take you both for coffee there. The owner's a great guy, Andy. Merritt is one of my favorites. Merritt's up in
Yep.
Dallas. Also, there's a few
Yep.
of them now. They started
Yeah.
in San Antonio. That's what I'm drinking this morning. And Figure Eight is right off of I-35, and they are really, really good. They're one of my favorites. So those three places are my favorite.
For our
Yeah.
listeners, I feel like I have this conversation sometimes with some of our friends that are trying to get into coffee, but they don't know where to start. What is a good sign of a good coffee shop to you?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to do this, but I'm going to judge a book by the cover and whatever espresso machine they're using. I mean, it's literally about espresso.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can make great drip coffee at home, even if you know nothing about it. But the espresso based drinks, I mean, you're paying for the components in the machine. Those machines they have are like $25,000 machines. So
Yeah.
I look at the machine. Most people don't know the brands, but Slayer is one of the most common. It's from Seattle that you'll see. La Marzocco is one of the most common. And I'll
Hmm.
look at the pictures on Google. And if they have one of those, I'm like, okay, they're probably pretty good. And then if they
Yeah.
offer pour over, they're usually pretty good too, because pour over, um, believe it or not, is not the most easy to create well.
No, it's not. I always tell people just ask them, what do you have on drip? And if they can't tell you, like, oh, it's a bean from this kind of country with this type of roast, and they say, I don't know, coffee, then I'm like, all right, I'll probably walk out. But
Good
uh,
answer. Good answer.
well,
Nice.
that's cool. Okay, so changing gears, like from coffee to chiropractic, which I feel they go hand in hand. What is a
Oh,
good
yeah.
sign of a successful practice to you?
Woo! Coming in swinging.
I
Okay.
mean, if we're just gonna ask the same question, right? I mean, it's pretty much the same question,
Yeah, it is. So I'm going to give the same answer because if my logic is right, then I should probably give a similar answer, right?
right?
I'm going to say a chiropractic office that makes it about chiropractic.
Yeah,
I wouldn't go into a coffee shop. And honestly, the coffee shops that have the best coffee aren't serving the best food. Usually it's really hard to find coffee shops that are like specialized in espresso and coffee, but then you can get anything that's even halfway edible in it because they put all their focus in on the coffee, but you can't find anything better. I think in a chiropractic office, you find the same thing when your focus is on chiropractic. It's really freaking good. You can't find anything better when you dabble in many things. I mean, I have no problem with people doing that, but that's just my humble opinion.
yeah. I think I really agree with that. I think you like hit the nail right on the head. So can you expand a little bit about like how do you guys at LifeSpring
Yeah.
really focus on chiropractic? And then I guess to follow that up, how do you get your associates that come right out of school to really appreciate and focus on chiropractic whenever I feel like we're exposed to so many other things and
Yeah.
modalities that aren't chiropractic in school?
Beautiful. Two great questions. And my brain has a really hard time sometimes with multiple things, as you'll learn me. So the second one was like, it was really juicy. That was really good too. The first one you said, help me out. I'm sorry.
Just tell us about your practice a little bit. What do you
Yeah.
guys do? What do you focus on? What kind of chiropractic do you deliver, etc.?
Yeah, so we focus on chiropractic. And I mean, it sounds simple, but when you think about hours, and a lot of people lately have brought into my field Alex Hermosi for some reason. They keep comparing him to me, and I'm like, wow, I'm honored. That's a great comparison. I'll take it. I'm not going to compare myself to him. But one of the things that I guess he talks about, and I know who he is very well. I have one of his books even, but it's simply the number of hours spent in something that makes us great at it. And I just started playing the guitar again, actually. And my guitar teacher was telling me, he goes, you know what? Jimi Hendrix is one of the best guitar players of all time because he took his guitar everywhere with him and he was obsessed with the thing. And he played more guitar than anybody else. He wasn't born a great player, he had it in him that, he became obsessed with it. And I grateful for, and this is another story and maybe an avenue we can get down later on. And one of the things that I would love to highlight later on this is many times is actually even a trauma response that can be a beautiful gift that we become obsessed with something. And something I've learned from many of the pro athletes I've taken care of that I have conversations with behind the scenes, they didn't come from good homes and they've used their obsession as a way to break free from what they've experienced in life. And I became obsessed with chiropractic and I used it, to be totally honest, maybe in a unhealthy way to not feel some of the things that were going on in my life. And I had a lot of success with it. And to bring it back maybe to the approach, if you're wanting the approach, it's more of a neurologically focused office. I've developed a technique that's, and I'm defining it right now, so it's on my mind and it's pretty easy to speak about. So it's a combination of maybe 14 to 15 different analysis systems and applications. And there's concepts outside of chiropractic that were brought in also because health is health. And it's a neurologically based focus first. There's a mechanical acknowledgement because, and largely through the foot, the primary mechanical system of the body is the foot. And then we add in 3 stability checks, ligament stability checks. And there's only one person. And this is kind of like, I'm going to whisper it, almost like a hidden secret or like a special sauce because no one's doing it. Literally, no one's doing it. It's freaking crazy. I've showed it to many people when they come in shadow and it's on a lot of my videos, but that's the system. There you go.
Nice. And how does it go? What does that look like, just out of curiosity, from when you bring in a new patient? How does that start, or how does that funnel, if you will, start with the exam and those type of things?
Yeah, always good question. Always rebuilding it and redefining it, to be honest. And I think that's one of the things I've done since I've started is just been really open-minded and open to change and redeveloping. And I'm still figuring it out. I'm still learning. So we spend 45 minutes with someone, and I think that's really key in the beginning. I think that there's a lot of different ways to do it. So I don't want to speak to mine too much in particular because I think a key takeaway here is time spent, utilization of time in the beginning, I think is really important to have on testing and
Mm-hmm.
history primarily. And I think that's what sets us up for having actually a really good strategy. And I think strategy and problem solving plays a huge role in the ultimate success of a transformation of a patient. The miracles happen in the plan.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's real good. That's real good. And with that, how are you guys doing care plans? Or are you more
Yeah.
like, okay, awesome.
Yeah. I
Awesome.
actually was talking to I won't mention his name. There's one of the football guys that I take care of. And I was asking him the other day, he plays for Texas, and I said, y'all have a strategy, right? You have a game plan for every game. And this is when I first started taking care of him. And he trusted me by this point too, because enough of his teammates have come in for years. And he goes, yeah, of course. And I said, well, the same thing is just as important in here. Because if we have no strategy or plan, we're just kind of showing up and doing our best. But there's always things that are unaccounted for. And if you don't zoom out to look at it, like even, and I love sports analogies. Matt Delgado uses sports analogies. So sorry for y'all if you don't like him or anyone else, but I think they're so
We're
relevant.
sports guys.
Yeah, we're sports guys. We joke all the time that we're like the philosophically based sports guys.
Perfect. We fit right in. But between whether it's like a basketball game, between every quarter, you adjust your game plan. In a football game, it's the same thing. And especially at halftime, you adjust your game plan. And I think a care plan is kind of the same thing, right? You build in check-ins or progress visits. You adjust your game plan. Sometimes you change the frequency. Sometimes you change the home care. I think the biggest thing that I've learned through the check-in points is actually changing the home care for what they're doing and just making sure that the timeline for healing goes right along with what I'd expect.
Yeah. So, to kind of bridge into that second question, how do you take an associate or a new doctor or people who are just graduating chiropractic school, and how do you get them to really understand chiropractic like at its core? Because I feel like a lot of us come out of school and we're like, "Oh, I'm a chiropractor. I help people," but they really don't actually understand like what the beauty of like truly pure chiropractic is.
Yeah. Great question. I'm glad you brought that back too, because that was still in the back of my mind. I'm like, oh, I hope he asks that again. You get, okay, I hope everyone's listening to this. You get a fire hose, you open their mouth, and you spray that fucker hard down their throat. I'm just kidding. You don't do that, but I think that's what a lot of people do. I have two things I want to touch on there. One was my own experience out of school. I went to Life West and we had amazing teachers at the time. Some of my teachers, Bruce Lipton was one of
Hmm.
my teachers at school. How freaking cool is that? Dan Murphy, one of the top researchers in the profession. And Dan Murphy's huge on lifestyle and nutrition. So naturally, when you're fed those things, especially from some of the greats, and you have an interest in health in general, you want to incorporate those concepts. And I didn't yet have an identity coming out of school as a chiropractor. It's like I'm ready to develop my own identity, but I didn't know what I was doing. So I worked as an associate in an office. It was a very philosophically based, straight chiropractic office. I'm so grateful that I did. And I think the most important thing that I took away from that was my experience about connecting me more to chiropractic itself. I fell in love with chiropractic at this office. And one of the conversations that I remember that my boss at the time had with me, he'd always call me Delgado, and there were two Matts. So he'd say, Delgado, I want you to look up how many books are there on Amazon? He's like, you're into all the nutrition and shit, right? I said, yeah, I am. He said, well, look up on Amazon how many books are there on nutrition. And there were like 40,000 books that came up on Amazon. He said, now look up chiropractic. How many books do you find? And there were like, I don't know, 100, 200, not that many, maybe a few hundred books. And he said, everybody is trying to give nutrition advice. How many people are actually talking about chiropractic? He said, your grocery store clerk is giving you nutrition advice. How many people are talking about chiropractic? And then I started listening from that moment on. And I actually heard maybe a week or two later a grocery store clerk, Elaine Over, giving someone nutrition advice about supplements. And I started cracking up. And from little by little, slowly, 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 as I saw more miracles happen, and I have goosebumps saying this, and this is like this is
Those are
also
real.
very
Those
Matt
are
Yeah,
real.
Del,
real goosebumps.
yeah, and this is also very Matt Delgado. When I say something that feels touching or moves me, that happens in my body, and this is when I started to really fall in love with chiropractic. Was I got to experience and be a part of a lot of the miracle stories that people talk about, and I heard about them. But unfortunately, until I really saw them and felt them viscerally, then I really felt what it was about. And I fell in love with chiropractic even more so. And I think school, probably a lot of people can relate. I came out of school feeling pretty disconnected, beat up, worn out. And I lost a lot of that juju and drive for it. I saw other people all amped up and fired up, but I didn't really have it. So, I know this is super long-winded to say now my approach with associates. I don't ever do what I was joking about in the beginning and force anything through a fire hose down their mouth. But I find the people that are the right cultural fit and that are really in love with chiropractic. And what I write, even when I'm on a job listing, when I'm looking for someone, there's, and there's all marketing and marketing, you have your ICA, your ideal client avatar, and you want to speak to your anti-ICA, someone who's not your ideal client avatar. So when I write a listing, I write it so that the right person is going to be like, oh my God, this is exactly what I want. And then there's also going to be some people that cringe and say, I don't want this at all. Like this guy wants someone that's so in love with chiropractic and that's really all in on chiropractic. And I don't hire on Chiro skills, but really the framework of how they think and believe and values and mission.
Hmm. That's one really awesome, both to tie it back into marketing and how you've most likely built your practice as well, is in your social media. And I'm not sure what all y'all do for marketing, but both speaking to the ideal client. I've never really heard someone mention speaking to the anti-ideal client as well. But it makes a ton of sense. And with that, with bringing on, it's cool to see. I mentioned Spencer and I are both friends with Brooks, but Justin Garcia, who also works at Lifespring, was
Yeah.
the first person to ever teach me side posture at Parker, and so it's cool to see a couple of friends at your office.
Yeah, he's the real
Uh,
deal.
he is for sure.
He's awesome. I love him so much.
He's just a ball of energy and positivity all the time.
Yeah.
But with that, the question I was curious on is with bringing on just in the simple comparison of Brooks, but then also Justin. Justin, I believe, was working somewhere else prior to, and so that
Yes.
was an associate that was already working versus a new grad in Brooks. What has that been like in training the two of them and those type of things?
Great question. I prefer a new grad because there's less training that's been built in, and a lot of times you'll have to rewire or try to change some of the habits that have formed in other offices. And usually, what I've found, new grads tend to be the most open-minded, and that's a
Hmm.
trait that I really value and that I look for. And with my team, though, with Justin, he was very open-minded and he fit to a T. So I'm open to someone being, he was, I don't, 2 years in or 3 years in, I think, at the time when I met him. And he is a gem of a human, such a great fit culturally and also as a chiropractor. He is the man. And to create an amazing team around you is so fulfilling. It's so rewarding. It's also really fucking hard, I'll be honest, because I think the more people you have in a business, the more at times it can feel like an adult daycare because we all have life things that come up. But I truly, truly believe, I'm not just saying this, I feel like I've got the best team in the world. And I love that I get to experience my wins with them. And they've also seen me in my hardest times. They've seen me cry more than anyone else, probably. And they've seen me be human more than anyone else.
Nice. That's really cool.
Yeah, I think that building a team, like really, it really is like the key, right? Because like we can do a lot by ourselves, but we can do exponentially more with other people. Like it's crazy. I don't, can you talk a little bit about like your time, like you were telling us before, like when you lived in Dallas and kind of how your
Yeah.
development went through? Because like I know for me, like, when I first started and I was a solo practitioner, I was doing the front desk, taking all the calls, like I literally almost like 10x the practice the minute that I hired somebody just to help, like with one person, right? You think like, oh, two people
Mhm.
double the work. And it's really not. It's literally like almost a 10-fold, 20-fold time, like multiplication. So can you tell everybody a little bit about like your development, like your origin story, where you came from and those things?
Yeah, for sure. And you see me look away just for a moment because I'm like, man, I hate talking about this, but I think it's really important. And I feel like a lot of people have a similar story. And I think we can actually relate through challenges more than anything else. I think everyone wants to talk about their wins and success, but I tried to think before coming into this. And I told you all off camera too. I was like, man, I want to show up as Matt Delgado. And to be really honest, I've never done a chiropractic podcast. I've kind of avoided the chiropractic profession because of some of the distaste from some of the things I experienced. And I'll talk about that here in a moment. But here we are full circle. And I'm so happy that I'm here with y'all today. And I really enjoy you. And I hope we get coffee together when you're in Austin. Side note.
Yeah, we
So,
should. We'll be in on Wednesday or Thursday at some point
Yeah.
okay, well,
for Zach's wedding. So
perfect.
it'll
Oh,
be
even
great.
better. Then I'm going to give you a bottle of whiskey, Zach. I hope you like whiskey. And
Thank you, buddy.
so, yeah, I'll keep it kind of concise. I'll try to keep it concise. But my first my first job right out of chiropractic school was in a high volume office. I was working about 75 hours a week. That was 6 days a week. And the expectation, even on Sundays, was that you would kind of be there too. We didn't really have anything necessarily that had to get done, but it was more of just like stay on top of your shit and show up and try to get ahead type of thing. And we'd start seeing patients at 6 a.m. So we were
Jeez.
there at 5:30 a.m. And I've always been a morning person, so that didn't scare me. But I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. And I was 26, I think 27 at the time. And the ego is a real thing. And a 26-year-old, 27-year-old male, I'm like, come on, bring it. I can do it. And I went full force like that through chiropractic school too. I mean, I did the accelerated route at Life West and did it in 3 years. And I'm grateful that I did it in 3 years. And in my first associateship, I'm telling you, like before, I'm really grateful for that experience overall, but I learned pretty quick that it wasn't the right fit for me long term. And I loved it in a chiropractic way. What I was seeing, I got to experience so many miracles, but what didn't align for me that I completely overlooked and that I never had mentorship in, and I didn't really figure this part of my life out yet, was the human side of it. Who were they as humans, and what values really did they have outside of work, and what were their lives like outside of work? And the more I saw that and experienced that, and no judgment toward them whatsoever when I say this, but it's just not what I wanted for me in my life long term. And I didn't want to spend the rest of my life literally working my life away. So our bodies are so intelligent, and my body literally started shutting down 3 months into working at this job. I had the worst gut pain of my life. I remember thinking on my left side, I'm like palpating, feeling my spleen. I'm like, damn, I think I have an enlarged spleen. Like, what is this mono? What is like, am I dying? Like, what is this? And I mean, to the point where it was really tough to even walk or move around. Like I felt that much pain, and fatigue was a real, real thing. And I just really didn't have a desire to do much, to be honest. And I think that was felt. I imagine it was pretty apparent too from my coworkers and my boss. So luckily there was a Chiro student I went to school with that graduated who lived in Lincoln, Nebraska. I was in Omaha, and that was 45 minutes away. And I had just told her on a Sunday night, the first time I said it out loud, I'd been thinking it, but I said, I don't know if this is the right fit for me. And there's power in saying something out loud, and you better be careful when you say something out loud. And that next Monday, my boss approached me and he said, Delgado, come here. I need to talk to you. He called me in the room and he said, do you really want to be here? I said, no, I don't. My body's shutting down. I, I don't think I can do this. And I felt like such a failure in that moment too, because I've never quit anything in my life. And I like to think I'm a hustler. Like I really give my best too. And it was really, really tough for me to feel like I was giving up, but I think it was the right move for me. And I told him, he said, when do you want your last day to be? And I said, well, how about a month from now? I didn't know what I was saying. I just arbitrarily said a number. And I didn't know then what I know now, the power of a pause. I should have taken a pause. That's okay. 3 days later, I call him, and it was a Thursday afternoon, and he didn't work Thursday afternoons. And I said, today's got to be my last day. My body is literally fighting this, and I can't go another day doing this. I am so sorry. And his response was, get your shit and get out, and give me the air mattress back that I lent you, and the backpack that I gave you too. So I felt pretty devastated. I gave him his stuff back, and I took the next probably 7 months off to regain my health and to figure out my own journey again, and to reconnect with, I think, I don't know where y'all are as far as spiritual people or if you're religious, but
We're
I think
both
kind of,
believers, and we're pretty
yeah,
open about it on the podcast as well.
great, beautiful. So I think spirituality is a key component to health. I think I realized that I had totally lost my sense of spirit and my sense of who I was. So I took the next month and a half living on a couch, my friend's couch in Lincoln, Nebraska. Thank God for her at the time. I nursed myself back to life. I had about $200 in my bank account. I had to break my lease. I had 250 grand in debt at the time. And I remember my mom telling me she'd call me Matthew when I'd get into trouble growing up, and get choked up talking about it now. My mom's passed, and actually, that's a really great, relevant thing to how that's changed my practice in my life. My mom passed a couple years back, so I get a little choked up talking about this. But she said, Matthew, if you don't take care of yourself and just stop and let your friend take care of you, I'm going to come down there myself. And I listened to her. I mean, when mom says, you listen. So
That's true.
yeah, so I took the next month and a half, and I watched Adam Sandler movies. He's my favorite childhood actor. I learned to laugh again. I had to learn how to sleep again. My sleep was really irregular, and I was waking up through the middle of the night thinking about work. My hair was falling out at the time, which really freaked me out. That was part of the Graves symptoms. And yeah, slowly, little by little, through foundational health practices, go figure, reduce your stress, you sleep, you eat good food. I had some supplementation and some guidance through that at the time because I feel like I needed supplemental support. Chiropractic was a foundational piece and my kind of rebirth and re-beginning there. And I learned to live really simply again. And I moved to Dallas, like y'all talked about. I did construction with my uncle. I had no construction experience. That was pretty funny. And I waited tables for a while. I moved to New Mexico, lived with my grandparents, lived with my uncle also. And I scraped by, but I regained my health. And that was my real amazing lesson at the age of 27 years old, that health is really the most valuable thing. And I think the cliche is a cliche until we're faced with a challenge where we're put in a situation. And then in a moment, we truly realize that's everything.
Man, first off, thanks for sharing. Our goal is not to get you emotional by any means, but
Okay, emotion's the gateway to the human soul. Bruce Lipton told
exactly.
me that one time. I love Bruce Lipton, so I'm okay with showing y'all that I'm human too. I'm human.
Yeah, I
It's
mean, I
all
think that's true. Like we were talking about, like I feel like in the chiropractic profession, all it has to do is be success and oorah, and especially like on the men's side of things, right?
Totally.
Like
That's what
for
took me 7 freaking years. Sorry to interrupt you. I want to hear your thoughts, but that's what took
no,
me
that
7 years to get back to doing this. Thank
no,
you.
it's so true. Like as men, like and especially as men, business owners and chiropractors, we're supposed to have all the answers. We're supposed to have
Yep.
all the money. We're supposed to have all the success, and we're supposed to do it in a week. And
Yep.
like that's the biggest thing, like I have like friends that are like just opening and they're like, I'm trying to have a thousand a week by the end of this year. And that's great, dude. Like there are people that do it and it's like, but do you really want that? And,
Yep.
like one of our coaches, Steph Wigner, she always talks about like, how do you have the life that you want without sacrificing the people that you're doing it for?
Oof.
And so shout out Steph. But I mean, that's been a big thing is because, really at the core of everything that we do, we all do it for ourselves, our families, our kids, all the people that we love the most, yet we sacrifice the time, the effort, the energy, and attention that they deserve. And so
Oof.
I think it's so beautiful that, like what you said, about how health, a cliche is a cliche until you're actually face to face with it.
Yep.
And that's really a reason why your practice is so beautiful, is because there's a deeper meaning behind just volume and success and accreditation and all those things. Like, I always say, like, I want to be the most successful people, like one of those most successful people that nobody knows about, but
Yeah.
that they have to meet,
Yeah.
right? Is because my story is so impactful and the weight that we carry and deliver to other people is so impactful and can change the course of people's lives, but only if we live authentically and not trying to make a sale,
Ooh,
right?
I love it. Everything you said is
It's
really great
so
there.
it's so tough for us to actually I'm going off now, but like
Good. Go, baby.
it's so annoying, like, and why we love doing the podcast the way that we do it and why we have no script is because we have nothing to sell people on this podcast. We're really here to bring people together and to bring people the opportunity for connection, because I mean, like, there are so many people that are going through my head as you're saying that story, be like, wow, they would love, like, they would be such a good fit with Matt, or Matt would be such an influential person in their life. And then
Mhm.
really that's what we're here for to do, right? And as chiropractors, we need to do that for each other. We only have a finite amount of adjustments that we can give in our life, right?
Mhm.
And if you waste all of them working for somebody else that doesn't appreciate you, or all those things, you're going to end up at 70 years old with a bad back and probably a heart condition because we give so much from ourselves.
Yeah.
And like how many chiropractors have strokes or heart attacks?
Yeah.
So many of them,
Yeah.
right? Is because we
Mhm.
stress ourselves out. We don't take care of ourselves, and we say we preach health and wellness and vitality and family and life. Yet we sacrifice all those things for everybody else's benefit. And so for a dollar, which is
So good.
so
So good.
yeah, thanks for sharing. And your vulnerability is a strength, right? And so if you're
Yeah.
listening, like I always tell people, like when you're starting up, you're going to learn everything about yourself because you empty it all out, right? If you
Yeah.
have any skeletons in your closet, they're walking in that clinic with you, right? And
Yeah.
people are going to see them. So really the startup and starting your practice, the most beautiful part about it is you really get to be face to face with yourself for the first time, and you
Hmm.
can't hide anything from anybody anymore.
Totally. No, I love that. And these themes are themes in our life until we change them and they come back. And so one of the little things I wrote down that I even wanted to share about this, and I say it in health, but then when we realize the mirror, when we see ourselves in the mirror, like, oh shit, here I am again. We're never broken or fixed. And this story of regaining my health was pretty miraculous for me in my own life. But then if I don't change anything, it's going to cycle right back there. So guess what happens? I built a pretty amazing practice pretty quick in a really competitive market, which I'm really proud of with very few resources. And then fast forward, I don't know, 3, 4 years later, I we had a snowstorm. Y'all remember the snowstorm that we
Yeah,
had?
Mhm.
2019.
Yeah,
In
the
Hershey,
really
yeah.
bad one. Yeah,
That was my
exactly.
first snow ever. I'd never seen snow before that.
Yeah, that's crazy, right? A lot of people said the same here in Texas. That's that was really memorable to me because I realized during that snowstorm how uncomfortable my life was. Everything shut down. We had no choice. Look, we had nowhere we can go. We had literally nothing we could do. And I truly felt the discomfort still in my life. And I realized, oh shit, I did it again. I didn't like the Home Alone thing, right? Home Alone 2. Oh, we did it again. And I realized, oh my gosh, here we go. Like I'm feeling really overwhelmed and uncomfortable, and my stress levels are really high, and I can't quite pinpoint it. So I reached out to a therapist in February of 2019 during that snowstorm. And it absolutely changed my life. I've been seeing a therapist every week now for the last 3 years, and it's been so foundational, I'd say now. And like, again, another rebirth of who I am as a human, who I am as a chiropractor, and who my practice is, the identity of my practice also. So I think there's so much more to life than just work. And I find so much meaning in my work. I freaking love it.
Yeah.
I will never, ever, ever give up chiropractic till the day I die. But there's so much more to life than work.
Yeah. I relate on to that on many levels. And I think Dr. Monique Andrews, did
Yeah, she was one
she
of my teachers. Yeah,
yeah, I
at
was gonna
Life
say,
Less. We had a
Yeah,
rock
that's
star lineup.
crazy.
y'all had a crazy lineup.
Yeah.
Uh, but one of the best things I think I've heard from her, besides all the neurology, is the power of changing your buts to your and. And so instead of, you got to have this great work ethic and you got to have this great success, but it's going to cost you this. Learning that you can have both by attaching that word and. It's like you can have a great practice and a great family and those type of things. But I also relate in a different sense. 5 years ago, about this time, uh, in the middle of chiropractic school, I was diagnosed with severe depression. I ended up in a
Hmm.
psychiatric hospital and those type of things.
Hmm.
And so for me, I had to, very similar to you, regain my health. It's funny, kind of, but there's videos in the physical diagnosis class of me, like, and people will send me videos being like, is this you? Like, this doesn't look anything like you, but it kind of looks like you. I was like 50 pounds heavier. I was super pale, all these different things. I'm like, that is me. But I hate seeing that, in a sense, because I'm like, man, I just let myself go. And so I had to regain my health and those type of things. And with that, I'm sure you've, since building your practice and everything, you can relate and now be a much better guide for
Hmm.
patients or practice members or clients when they come into LifeSpring because you have gone through it yourself. And I think that's where really great chiropractors, in my opinion, come from, is they've gone through similar instances or are really close to someone that's gone through that.
100%. Totally. And I was going to ask you the same. I'm sure your own story
Mhm.
probably in some way on the back end gave you so many gifts, right?
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's no longer, and you hear it's a cliche again until it's a cliche, but nothing
Yeah.
happens to you, it happens for you. And
Yeah.
I firmly believe a lot of the injuries and things I've gone through happen for me, not to me, because of those lessons that I learned on the back end of them.
Totally. And I think one of those lessons I pulled out of that from me, and I'm not sure if this is relevant to you, and you mentioned using this to benefit a patient's experience.
Mhm.
One of the ways in which that's shown up now is, for one, is relatable at times when we can use our vulnerability. It's such a powerful thing. And it took me a while to figure that out in practice and to show up as me. But now that I'm able to,
Mhm.
it is so cool. And that's one of the things I always encourage of new hires of mine is trying to coach them in ways where I can get them to better express their true self. Cause I think that's really important for us as consumers, as patients, to trust a practitioner. Is we got to see some element also of them being human. We don't have to,
Mhm.
but I think it's really helpful. And I think it gives them more credit too if they've been through that experience, and also if they've helped others through a similar experience to what you're trying to
Mhm.
help them with. And one of the things is trying to avoid the big swings of the highs and lows and rather smooth it out, because those are always going to be there. And I think if we're open to just not fighting those low times, we can let that low time be and it doesn't get quite so low. And then we can come back
Mhm.
up and high. And I think overall, we can go up in a trending direction. And I think that's a better way to look at something holistically, is slow, sustainable over time without massive swings.
Mhm. Mhm. And I think as entrepreneurs, I, Dave Ramsey, I heard say it best, is entrepreneurs are the only animal on the planet that can, at times, really take on both extreme highs and in 30 seconds, extreme lows, without, you know, killing ourselves in a
Yeah,
sense from a physiological standpoint. Although we tend to find out it's like, well, this is quite the roller coaster. But no,
totally.
you're spot on, and starting to realize in taking care of patients is like, okay, yes, I know you might be sick again, but let's see how long you're sick for. Are you going to be sick for
Mhm.
2 weeks like you normally were? I know it's 3 days. Like, okay, great. Like that's great progress. Just because you're getting adjusted regularly or whatever your health aspect is doesn't necessarily mean you're bulletproof from what life is going to throw at you.
Totally. And with anything, right? My therapist just talked to me about this. She's like, because I was in my own brain, like, damn it, here I am again. And she's like, yeah, but Matt, look, remember 6 months ago when you're in a similar situation, and you remember how you handled that? And I was like, oh shit, she's right. And now there's so much growth here, but I forgot that. And I think as practitioners, it's our job to help be a guide more than anything, and to
Mhm.
help even reference for people context. Context gives everything meaning, context and relativity. So without those lower times or those hard points, we're not human. And
Yeah.
it's probably more detrimental if we're not feeling some kind of low or hardship at some point in life. And like we were just talking about, I think a lot of the men that have come before us in the profession have had a really hard time expressing hardship or vulnerability in things like even their personal life or in their practice. And a lot of what they've shown have been their success and their wins, which is amazing. That's great. But what we didn't hear is those things all came with a trade off. And they
Mhm.
just weren't choosing to show that to us, which many times could be detrimental home life or really unhealthy relationships around them or no social life. Like when we're going through something hard, do we have people that are calling us and supporting us and helping us through that? And when we have our wins, who are celebrating those wins with us? Like who's at our table? That's so important. Human
Mhm.
connection is so foundational, important for health.
It's really
Yeah,
cool. It's
I
cool to.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's cool to hear you say that because I can very clearly see you saying that to LifeSpring practice members on, I don't know about the daily anymore now that you're not seeing clients all the time, but um it's very clear that it's very passionate with you, and it's really admirable to be able to envision it that clearly.
Totally. And one of the hard things was like taking vacations early on. And I promised myself, I was like, I'm never going to get back in this situation. I kind of did, but not as bad. It's all the relativity, right? So there we go. And it's gotten better, only better and better trending wise through time. But patients actually said when I would leave and I thought they would be upset, they actually admired it. And they would tell me, we really admire the way that you live your life and how you have such a good work-life balance. And I started to realize, wow, I could lead by example in more ways, health wise, than just being a chiropractor, but actually how I live my life. And then people would start asking more about just life things. And I'm really careful not to be people's therapist or overstep in
Mhm.
directions. But if they ask me little nuggets of life things, I mean, I'm happy to share how I live my life. And we're kind of different as chiropractors. So I'm always happy to share that.
Yeah, I think that like I was just about to say that before you brought it up. Like it was so awesome to we just got married and we went on our honeymoon and everybody's like, so you're taking at least a week for the honeymoon, right? Like you're not coming back. Don't call me, don't text me. We're not going to call you. But it was really nice to have like literally everybody send us off with congratulations. We're so excited for you. You deserve time off. You
Yeah.
should take more of it more often. And they're like, we are super grateful that you're always available, but sometimes you're always available. And so that that was really nice. And as we were flying to the Caribbean, it was just interesting to like look out of the window and be like, wow, like look how like Dallas is huge, and then like we fly away from it and it's a speck, right? And it's
Mhm.
all about perspective.
Mhm.
And like the location in which your perspective sits is going to determine how high and how low your lows are. And I was
Yeah.
just telling Caitlin this morning, like I was like, it's crazy, but like I have to remember and I have to force myself to really remember, like we doubled the practice in the past 2 months, which is
Amazing.
which is amazing.
Congratulations, by the
Yeah,
way.
thanks. But
Amazing.
but not to say that, but it's like I'm coming back this week from a week off being like, oh man, like our collections are down because we were down a week and our visits are monthly down, like, and because it was record month after record month after record month. And so it feels like a low, but really it's like the best time in my life.
Yeah.
Like it's been the most amazing time, and I've actually been at the most peace that I've ever been at since I've opened the practice, is because I was actually able to step away, get away from it, and gain some perspective. Because like when we're head deep in everything and you're face first in the practice, like you can never actually see what it is like it's for. Like it's like looking at a painting. Like if your nose is touching it, you don't actually appreciate its beauty, but you have to step away, right?
Ooh, I love it. I love your analogies too. That's
I'm the
great.
analogy guy. That's my thing.
Me
But
too. We're gonna be friends. Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm curious with that too. What you said, it's interesting because I think of I'm gonna use another analogy here for you. It's like nature, it's seasons. We always want one season. We love summer. Summer's amazing. In Texas, it's not as great because
Yeah, Texas is
we
like
I was
have
gonna say
amazing
spring is a
years.
little bit better.
we
Yeah.
like the 2 weeks in April that we it's like
Yes, exactly. Exactly. But for people like who grew up in the North or live in the North, and
Yeah.
I partially grew up in Washington State, and for 9 months out of the year, it sucks.
Terrible. Terrible.
3 months is great.
Mhm.
And I think in our business, we tend to think of it so similarly of like, we want growth, make a lot of money, see a ton of patients, but we don't see actually the necessity of the seasons and the importance of them. And, in nature, you see rest is super important. And if you're going to talk about, again, if I don't know if I want to bring spirituality, or religion to this, the Sabbath, something like that, that's the whole purpose of that is like the importance of rest. And one of the things that I've tried to implement in my own office is that we do, the reason we give 4 weeks paid time off to all our chiropractors is because we want them taking time off. And that's one of the hardest things I'll have with new grads is I got to kick them in the butt a little bit and say, just trust me. Because my job is to be the coach. Just trust me in in indirect way, like what you're talking about, Spencer, it's going to pay off. It's like you're not going to have maybe the first week you get back this massive boom, but the energy. And Spencer, you just said it's the most peaceful you've ever felt in your life. What does that do for your practice? You're about to triple it, baby.
yeah, exactly. But so all that kind of laying up with, right, to bring everything full circle, like with the healing and the restoration of health and like regaining your health and how it leads you forward, like somebody, I don't know who, we hear a lot of things, but there's some things in our life where we're actually paying attention, where we have these statements that like echo in our minds and that like really like redefine like our soul. And like one of them is like, um, the person who you were
Mhm.
is going to lead you to like, or the person who you once were is making you equipped to be the person like to help those people, right? Or you're best equipped to help or those who you used to be. That I just butchered it, but
I do the same thing. We
yeah,
are very similar.
I
I'm really
know.
lousy at recalling these phrases. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's okay. But at the core, you understand what I'm saying. You're
Yeah.
most equipped to help and serve the person who you used to be. But that takes time and healing, right? It's easiest to tell people where to go in places where you've been, right? And so, how do you use your experience from the overworked, over hustled, burnout associate, then I'm starting with like I'm with thin capital and like we're gonna like bare bones this office, right? If
Hmm.
how do you help guide chiropractors and be the coach and be the guide and not the hero in their story, but just their
Hmm.
guide into developing themselves like as chiropractors? Like tell us about your journey after you moved to Austin
Hmm.
and your development and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think there's a couple things if we're talking about now, like you're talking about being a coach or a guide for them. There's a lot that goes into that development. I'm happy to talk about that, but I learned a lot through, I'd say more of the mistakes. I think the mistakes is where we tend to learn the most through. And I'm happy to highlight those because without specifics, it seems a little corny and a little cliche, right? And it's like, well, come on, dude, prove it. What are
Yeah,
you talking about?
context.
Like, yeah, context matters. Yeah. But I mean, you said it so well. It's like they got to do it themselves. So, but if you hire on values and you know what to ask, and then it's a good fit naturally. Because I've hired people that are also Chiro nerds, that are lifetime learners, that are going to seminars, and I set important boundaries with them too. And I'll tell you both, I am not a perfect human. I am not a perfect boss. Ask anybody that's close to me. And sometimes I'm hard to work alongside. But I think also, with that being said, I'm really proud of what I've created. Really proud of the culture that we have. And I think it's really, really great, to be honest. But just again, I got to come back to that because I think it's the importance of that. And I think you don't crack a whip on people. Like, yeah, you can guide them. And I think as a coach, you got to know when to be supportive and when to be directive. That's one of the things I work on myself, and it doesn't necessarily come naturally. You got to work at it. So I've worked with people to help me, and I'm getting better at it, but I'm not perfect at it again. But leadership. And I think naturally I've had some leadership qualities, but I've spent thousands of dollars and countless hours to develop and to sharpen those skills because nothing just comes. Where we put our time and where we put our attention, where we put our money, we grow.
Yep. I, I mean, spot on for sure. And if it's cool with you, I'd like to kind of 180 this conversation and go a little bit of a different direction. As we
Sure.
talked about a little bit prior to clicking record was, you know, building the practice 7 years ago is
Yeah.
way different than how you would go about building a practice today. And so out of curiosity, since I was not building a practice 7 years ago, I was about to turn 21. So I was very excited. But with that said, what were you doing 7 years ago? And what are you now, you as well as the associates, doing to build Lifespring?
Yeah. Great question. 7 years ago, I found my way into social media, which, by the way, I hated social media. I'm still not, it's not my favorite. I was the last of all my friends to have an Instagram. I had every reason why I shouldn't do it. And then I met a couple people, but one of them who comes to mind, a guy named Jarrett Stone. Jarrett is a personal injury attorney, and I was trying to network with him. And I invited him. And if you know me, you know I will never invite somebody to a Starbucks in my life because that's like blasphemy. We don't go to
It's
Starbucks around
true.
here.
You
I'm not
don't.
a fan of the Green Giant. But I invited him to a Starbucks that was right by my office, and it was right next to my office. And when people hear that, they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Just let me finish. Just let me finish." I didn't even order anything, if that's helpful to know. I sat down with him. Maybe I ordered a tea or like a water or something. I didn't want them to be like, dude, you got to order something. And I started talking to him about potentially networking. And I started doing PI in the beginning. I didn't do any insurance. I was all cash based, but I started dabbling with a little bit of PI, and it was through Jarrett. He had never been adjusted. So I offered him, hey, you want to walk over, and this is my plan, to my office and experience what it's like seeing a chiropractor? And he said, yeah, sure. He said, once he saw me in my element, it was totally different. He's like, yeah, when we were like talking at a table, like you seem like a nice guy, but to see you so passionate clearly about what you love to do, he said it changed things for me. We became friends. He's a young guy, he's really similar in age to me, and was basketball player. So we bonded over that and plays volleyball and happens to be really great with a camera and so photographer and videographer. Jarrett was my first photographer and videographer, and I had no idea what I was doing on social media. He was growing his social media page organically through Instagram, and he was helping me do the same. I had no idea what I was doing, did not like doing it. And I remember the first advice he ever gave, a couple pieces, was like he took this picture of me that was almost like it felt like a pseudo modeling photo. And I'm just sitting there and it's like the side of my face. I'm like, this is so dumb, Jarrett. Like people are not going to like this. He goes, trust me, just share personal details about your life. People care about you. Like stop being so doctory. Like just share some details about you. So I'm like, all right, whatever. I'll do it once. If it's not well received, I can always delete it, whatever. I did it, and damn it, Jarrett was right. I had more engagement there than I ever had. And he helped me to talk also less like a chiropractor, less like a new grad chiropractor, and more like a human. He helped undoctor me. And I used social media and largely learning it through friends. And I was on it at a time that was really great because nobody in Austin that I knew of was using video for Instagram. I started with pictures, high quality pictures, and I got a lot more traction. I started networking through it. That's really where I used it to my advantage the most. Was I started meeting people in my community through that instead of like a BNI group. I use it as a networking tool. And I had like, I don't know, 300 followers. Not that that matters at all whatsoever. But I was using it as a networking tool, and it was working for me as a networking tool more than anything. And then once I started to do video after about a year of using it, that's where it really popped off for me because nobody yet was using Instagram for video. And I would not edited nothing, like one take raw video, and I'd post a video of me adjusting a foot, and I'd get hundreds of shares, thousands of likes, all these comments on it, and I'd get hundreds of followers. And through that year or two period is largely where I grew an audience through social media and generated a shit ton of leads through it also organically. And it was a lot of it through even influencer marketing. I'd have people in the community who were more niche and micro influencers, not big famous people, or it didn't matter about their following. I learned pretty quick, but really their influence in a space and how influential they really were. And if people listened to them, and that's largely how I built my practice foundationally through the first 2 to 3 years was social media. And then, as we know, fast forward now, there's a lot of noise in the space. So if you're starting a fresh practice, it's going to be pretty tough to make some noise on social media and find some reach. It's more of a platform that's paid now. So strategy really comes into play. If I were to start a practice today, in a competitive market like Austin or Dallas proper, it's going to be a lot more challenging than suburbs are always going to be easier. There's less competition. I think helpful principles, if you niche down and if you really hone in on your positioning, your messaging, who you are, find clarity on how you're different. I think those things are helpful. Um, foundational pieces of marketing like a email list is probably the most valuable thing. We own it. No one has it. It's not like a channel that can shut it off. Like I sent an email yesterday, 50% of my
Nice. That's big.
people, subscribers open it.
That's
And
great.
yeah, and so much better than
Just for people listening, I think like the chiropractic average of uh, um, open rate is like 16-20%.
Yeah,
And
it's
so
about 20%.
that 50% open rate's great.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That means you have a really engaged audience.
Yeah, I got some good advice early on, and I think mentorship played a key role in my development, and a lot of my influences come from outside of the chiropractic profession. Probably to a fault, I'll be honest. I turned a cold shoulder after my first experience to the
Right.
profession, and I thought like, man, all these men in the profession are just out to eat their young, and I had a really similar narrative to a lot of people, which sucks because it probably has kept me from meeting really amazing people like the two of you, and I'm so happy that we could even have this conversation. But mentorship in other areas, you realize business is business, and some of my greatest mentors have done great things in other areas and other fields and have had a really large influence on my practice. One of them I got to mention, Brian Eisenberg. He's been a dear friend and mentor to me. He's in marketing, SEO. He's done a lot of keynote speaking through the years, author, New York Times bestselling author, I think 3 times. Brian is he's G'd up from the feet up.
Yeah.
And he's been a great friend, and he's really helped me with customer experience is really where he shines. And that's probably what I'm most proud of is customer experience. And I've taken a lot of influence through him and through things like the restaurant and hospitality industry as well.
Yeah, that I think something that Zach and I bring up a lot in our podcast is people who aren't chiropractors. Like I
Mhm.
think it's always great to have a chiropractor coach you on how to build a practice because the business in like the industry of chiropractic is a little bit different than a lot. It's different than PT because we have higher volume of visits. It's different than the medical system, especially if you take cash. It's
Yeah.
different than like massage because it's I would say more essential healthcare because it just works differently, like on the nervous system than a massage does. I think, and like anyway, it's just very different. It's chiropractic is very niche, and there's a lot of people who are chiropractors in the chiropractic space that are now doing like business consulting and coaching and stuff. But that's not what they are actually good at. Like they might be
Yeah.
good, more proficient at it than most chiropractors, but they don't have like a 10, 20, 30 years in email marketing and stuff. Like
You,
the
you're right.
yeah, like Zach and I like love like this one guy, Jared Moon. Like he's a email digital marketing guy. Like we go crazy on his stuff, and he's got a podcast called Better Human Business. And I've learned like so many things from him just because it's just business principle. And a lot of the things that we listen to are things that are not from chiropractors. And I think that's honestly a really good edge that we have on people because you have more business clarity.
Mhm.
Because people who had a decompression practice are going to market different ways than a pediatric practice versus a
Mhm.
back pain practice versus an insurance car crash practice versus a geriatric rehab practice. But business
Yep.
principles are business principles. And so those
Amen.
chiropractors who are focused on that niche, they are biased to that principle, right? Whereas if you take people from the restaurant industry, like Unreasonable Hospitality is such an awesome book.
I was going to mention that. That's one of my favorite books. And same with Power of Moments. If you haven't read that, that's a requirement to
Yeah.
work in my office. You got to read that book. Both of those books.
Yeah, Unreasonable Hospitality is such a phenomenal book, and it's all about the restaurant industry and everything. And now,
So,
when I go to restaurants, I appreciate it even more because I'm like,
yep.
oh, this place really understands what they're doing. And so
Yep.
then that's a connection for me because I like to support local. And so if I find businesses that are doing good local things, and it's like, okay, well, let me try to reach out through social media or something like that to these business owners because they obviously are taking a step in the right direction. So let's connect, and then we'll build each other up, And so I think
Yeah.
getting out of the chiropractic bubble is super important for your development as well.
Totally. I have a quote. I'm pulling up my phone right here that came from that book, and it's something that I use in business and in life. And it was one of my favorite things. Let's see if I can find it. But I think that, and maybe I'm going to not have it in front of me, of course, but it's basically along the lines of, oh man, and Spencer, this is how you know I'm just like you. I'm about to butcher this
It's all right.
because I don't have it in front of me, but it's something along the lines of, oh, actually, I am going to have it right here. You grow when you engage with another perspective and decide to decide again. That was one of
Yep.
my favorite quotes from that book. And so I think the importance of being open minded in that and to be open to even rewriting. And the way that I've developed my technique system is by being open to being wrong or finding a better solution. That's played a huge role in my business too. And what was the other one that I really liked from this is, was it to give to others what we want to receive? Endless, and he talks about in that book, endless reinvention, because as we grow and evolve, what we want to receive changes.
Mm-hmm.
So we're always reinventing ourselves. And if we're really true to that, it should change naturally as we change. And we always want to, like that, give others what we want to receive. So I think there's so much beauty in endless reinvention. And that doesn't mean you have to scrap the whole thing again and again, but I think it becomes more refined and polished and better through time if we're
Yeah.
open to
Yeah.
other experiences. And a lot of them, it sounds like y'all are really similar, that you enjoy perspectives outside of the profession.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It definitely gives a lot of insight. And I think it sounds like similarities where you probably go to the team members at Lifespring with a new idea probably every other day. And they're probably at the point where they
Oh man.
roll their eyes, or they're like, okay, another thing. But you also get to see the fruit of it. And so it creates a lot of excitement. And I think some teamwork and some effort that a lot of jobs and a lot of cultures don't necessarily have. And that's something I love, at least about the entrepreneurial journey, and about our practice is similar to yours. We're cash based, but we see a lot of adults that want to use their insurance. We're not necessarily, at least for me and kind of the circles I run in, I'm around Spencer a lot. But you see a lot of cash based that are mainly pediatric, prenatal, not necessarily like that, like entrepreneur or that young professional type practice niche. Or at least for me, a lot of people I look to that were seeing similar populations, it was insurance, PI, and
Yeah.
that was really it. And so having to craft that patient experience has been vital, and something that we're working on each and every day.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
Love
then you
it.
need to read Unreasonable Hospitality. For those of you guys listening, if you don't know what the book is, it's about this guy who takes he's like in the restaurant industry, and he basically takes this like basic run-of-the-mill restaurant to like top 50 in the world, like within like a year or two. Um,
Spencer, I got to help you out. This is the best restaurant in the world. 11 Madison Park for people
yeah,
listening. This is the
yeah,
top restaurant in the world. It's in New York City. I haven't been because they actually just switched the menu to like vegetarian or vegan. I'm like, man, come on. But I'll still go. But go ahead, Spencer. I just had to
yeah.
stop that. It's the best.
So
It's the top restaurant in the world.
yeah, so he takes it, but he basically just says, "All right, well, if this is what everybody's doing, then we're going to be like everybody's been." And so he just reinvents the entire thing, and I think like a part of it is he's just like, "What do you guys want to do today?" And like he lets like the staff like run a lot of the things, and he kind of manages it all, and it's really cool. So it's definitely a good read, and I think it's a better listen. I listened to it on audiobook, and just the
Really?
way like he talks about like the restaurant experience and like the inflection in his voice is just like so pure. Like I think audiobooks, especially Matthew McConaughey's book Green Lights,
Yeah.
like dude, if you guys haven't listened to Green Lights, like catching green lights is how to build momentum like in your life
Yeah.
and recognizing like when God has unlocked the door for you, and it's just awesome. So
And momentum builds motivation, by the way. So if we're lacking motivation, it's because we feel like we don't have momentum. That's what I always come back to. One of my business coaches had said that too.
yeah.
You know, you talked about that book, Spencer. I love that. And I think one of the things that's worth mentioning there is that oh man, I'm losing my train of thought. What did okay, the concepts, and I think we're seeing this in chiropractic, and it's like, oh, this is
Yep.
what we're doing right here. Is you have like there's this reverence that you see like the greats that have come before you, and you see the beauty in what the profession is. And I think we see like you guys have probably read green books, or you are familiar with at least the chiropractic philosophy, and you really are like, wow, this is so beautiful. But at the same time, you're like, yo, this shit has got to change. This is boring as fuck. Like, come on. And that's exactly what this guy does in the restaurant industry. So I
Yeah.
brought the same thing into my office, and I'm like, y'all, this guy's putting words to what we're doing. It's the same thing. Like we're changing the experience. We're changing the art of it, the way we dress, the way we talk, the art that's on the walls, which by the way, I haven't said this publicly yet, but I might as well just say it here. One of my favorite things to do is create artwork for chiropractors. And I've used there's when y'all come see my office, you'll see there's nothing you'll find in any other office. We've had a lot of people on YouTube reach out, seeing things like, hey, where'd you get that? Or hey, can I buy that from you once they find out that I made it? I've always said no. Now I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing holding on to this? I'm going to start selling it to the profession. And I think it's just needs a facelift to have like a rebrand on the profession to bring it
Yep.
a little more zazz. There's the same posters that have just been recreated for
Over and
years.
over and over again. Yeah, it's like the same logos too. It's always like whoever's owning last name, whatever line is in your name, it's a spine.
With those
Or
swoopy people.
yeah, with the
Yeah.
swoop. Yeah, like we're always talking about like, oh, like good posture and good alignment, but every spine
Yeah.
in our pictures are always crooked, or everyone, every poster on the wall never has a happy person. It's always like holding on to the neck with like the
Yeah.
pain and stuff. Like we need to talk about like life and vitality and empowerment and abundance and all of those things. And that's kind of
Totally.
like yeah, the whole profession needs a facelift, but I think if everybody would get out of their ego seats and actually listen to what people have to say, then we actually would be a lot more collaborative because we could learn from everybody else. But instead, we
Yeah.
think like everybody else sucks. There's no way they're making money. They're not a good like. I hate whenever other people go to chiropractors and then they say like, oh, blah blah blah, and you're like, well, that chiropractor didn't know what they were doing. No, they
Yeah.
knew what they were doing. You might just not have been in the right fit. Like, like every
Exactly.
every bus works and is driving in the right direction. You just might be on the wrong bus. Like you
Yeah.
might be on the wrong plane. Like if you get on the wrong
Right.
plane, you can't fault the pilot for taking you to somewhere you don't want to be. You got on the plane, right?
Yeah.
And so same thing with your business, same thing with your patients. Like make sure people are in the right seats. But I love what you're doing with your branding and stuff. And I think it's super like personable, and you can tell that people enjoy your environment, from the people who work in your office to the people who are clients of yours. And it just goes to show what the intention of the experience that you're creating.
Yeah, thank you. And it's interesting now because and I resonated with everything you said, by the way. I've gotten off of really, I don't do much on social media these days, at least. Like I'm working on some back end things, and a lot of my time is there. And over the last year, I've transitioned out to working a half day a week in the office, and I'm primarily learning marketing, what feels like drinking through a fire hose. And my
Hmm.
business coach, who's not a chiropractor, and shout out to him, Chris. He's incredible, him and his wife, Kim, and he's been a huge influence. And their philosophy is really to teach people to understand, to learn it, so then they can do it themselves, but then also outsource it at that point if they want to. And I use the same philosophy in health. I think it's a really holistic way. And it's not just jump on the train of what's trendy until or what's working until it doesn't work anymore, and then you're screwed. And that's what I did with Instagram. So I learned the hard way of seeing some challenges is like, dang, now it's not working like it did. What do I do next? And I had enough struggles to be really candid, to be really honest. And a lot of people probably think, really, like LifeSpring, you had trouble growing or getting people? Yes. Yes, yes. I didn't know marketing, and I practice in one of the most competitive markets in the country. So a couple of Chris's lines that I want to use here today, even I'm reading them from my phone here. I messaged him yesterday. I said, hey, what was that one line you always share? One of them is profit over popularity. So I don't care so much about being popular on Instagram or
Mhm.
YouTube or social media anymore. My focus is making an impact. And profit is a measure of that. I know you're probably familiar with Simon Sinek, right? He talks about like
Hmm.
the profit is or money, it's the gas in the car. The point of the gas in the car is, to help. I'm
Make it go.
butchering. Here you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, to make it go. So it keeps the lights on, but it's not the whole purpose of the car. You don't buy a car because you want to put gas in it. It's the byproduct of what you need to move the thing. So impact is what we're here to make. And the other thing that Chris says that I wanted to share with people that I think is really important also, because you hear chiropractors, ooh, and this turns my gears. So I'm like, here's my chance to rebuttal. Let's go. Profit is for, because they talk about how much money they collect and make. So here's where y'all should really catch them with their pants down. You should ask them this. You probably shouldn't ask them this. This would get you in trouble. But basically, profit is for sanity, revenue is for vanity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They talk
So
about
true.
how much money they make. How much do they keep? There were times in my business I was much more profitable early on when I was collecting much less.
Yep.
Overhead's a factor. You all know that. And when you grow, sometimes, yeah, you invest in things that will pay off later on, but people don't tell the full story. A lot of times they talk about how much revenue or how much money is coming in, but how much of that is profitable, and also what's the culture of a company like. We're not looking about it holistically. Like, if I interviewed all their employees on their happiness factor, how happy are they going to be? And I'm not perfect. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I got to stir the pot a little bit, and that's me stirring the pot.
Yeah, that's good. You have to challenge people. So, but I think that is getting close to as much time as we have. But Zach and Matt, do you guys have anything left for the good of the order? Any final closing remarks?
I got one. I just got to give a thank you to the people who have been in my corner and who are still in my corner. I had a conversation with a friend before this going in, Katie. She's a chiropractor also, Dr. Katie Schlein. She's in, y'all should totally have her on your podcast too. She's in San Diego. She runs a peds practice.
Mm-hmm.
She's been a dear friend for years, and she knows my journey. I know hers. And I just really, it's so great having people in our corners. Um, Steph, my girlfriend, she's a chiropractor also. I got to say, same thing. You should have her on your podcast as
She's
well.
awesome. I was just at a seminar with her.
Really? Yeah, Steph Masick. Yes, she is awesome. She's a badass chiropractor. That's right.
Yeah.
But I so appreciate both of them in my life. And same with Steph, it's like the supporters behind the scenes serve such a big role. And I can't thank Steph enough also for just being so supportive. And it's helpful to be dating someone who's also a big player in the field and who's making waves herself and in such an incredible way. And I find so much inspiration in the work she does. And I really admire the work she does. So she makes that easy for me too. But just wanted to give the thank you there for the people in my corner who support me. And I wouldn't be here doing this without any of them.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And we always love to finish up with our question we ask every guest is, what's now for Dr. Matt Delgado? What's coming up? And what are you excited to be bringing to Austin and the chiropractic community?
Ooh, baby, I'm just getting started. Um, I'm working on optimizing my current practice in my vision, and I don't want to put a timeline on it because that's gotten me in trouble in the past, but in my vision, and I don't have to necessarily say the whole big portion of it, but I think in uh, you'll see soon, I'm going to work on more locations. I want to expand my reach in Austin and make a bigger impact on the community here and continue to expand outside of that. I've recently stepped into the seminar space also with Dr. Bailey Black, who I work
Yep.
with at Lifespring Chiropractic. She went to Parker. Teaching is one of my favorite things. So, and it's a dream come true. So to get to teach has been really incredible. And the foundations, same as my belief in health, are the most important. So that's where we really focus on. And the chiropractic artwork side of things, I've thought my whole life I wasn't creative, and turns out I am. I just didn't know how to channel my creativity. And now that I've found something that really sets me on fire and really is in alignment with the profession that I want to make a big impact on, you will see some things soon with that. And I cannot wait to help people make their offices more pretty and tell a story with pictures, because pictures should tell a story.
Very true. Where can people find you and follow you along for the journey?
Yeah, the only platform that I still use and fully control myself would be Instagram, even though I'm not as active on there. So Dr. Matt Delgado on Instagram, and I am more than happy to connect with people. I love meeting new friends. So if you're a chiropractor, if you're not a chiropractor, whatever, would love to meet you, love to connect.
Right on. Well, Dr. Matt, thanks so much for being on the What Now podcast. We'll see you next time. Peace. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the What Now podcast. If you took something valuable away, feel free to share it with a friend, post it on your socials, or give us a 5-star review. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.